Welcome to African Folktales by Tammy. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more interesting stories. Also share this story to someone who might be interested. Let's get into the story. In the quiet town of Obinachi, where tradition ruled and the sun painted the land golden at dusk, Chinedu first met Amara. It was at the annual Yam Festival, a celebration of harvest and community. Chinedu, a confident young carpenter admired for his craftsmanship and charm, had been encouraged by his friends to attend. Amara, on the other hand, had reluctantly come, persuaded by her friends to take a break from her sewing business. She was known for her stunning beauty and modest nature, and her presence often turned heads. As Chinedu moved through the bustling crowd, his eyes fell on Amara, who stood under a baobab tree, laughing with her friends. She wore a simple but elegant Ankara gown, and her aura drew him in like a moth to a flame. Gathering his courage, he approached her with a blend of humor and charm. Amara, though hesitant, found his confidence endearing. The two began to converse, discovering shared dreams and values. Chinedu spoke passionately about building a legacy, while Amara revealed her ambition to open a fashion house that would inspire women. Their connection deepened over months of evening walks and shared meals. Chinedu's consistent gestures of kindness, repairing her mother's roof during a storm or bringing her freshly carved sewing tools, melted her reservations. One moonlit night, at the same festival where they met, Chinedu proposed. He knelt before Amara in the center of the town square, surrounded by friends and family. "Amara," he began, his voice trembling, "you are the missing piece of my life. Marry me and let's build our dreams together." Amidst cheers and tears she said yes. Their wedding, held a month later, was a grand celebration. The town came alive with drummers, dancers, and the aroma of rich delicacies. Amara, radiant in her traditional attire, vowed to support Chinedu through every storm. In return, he promised to cherish and protect her. But promises, like fragile glass, sometimes shatter under the weight of expectations. The first year of their marriage was blissful. Amara and Chinedu built a home filled with laughter and plans for the future. When Amara announced her pregnancy, Chinedu was overjoyed. He often spoke of a son who would carry on his name, teaching him the skills of carpentry and the values of hard work. Amara, while excited, prayed silently for a healthy child, boy or girl. Months later, on a rainy night in Obinachi, Amara went into labor. Chinedu paced nervously outside the room as midwives worked tirelessly. Hours later, the wail of a newborn filled the air. "It's a girl," the midwife announced, handing the baby to Amara. Amara wept tears of joy as she cradled their daughter, Adaobi. But when Chinedu entered the room, his smile faltered. "A girl," he muttered, forcing a weak smile. He kissed Amara on the forehead but barely glanced at the baby. Though he didn't say much, his disappointment was palpable. Over the months, his indifference became clearer. He rarely spent time with Adaobi, often excusing himself with work. Amara dismissed it as an adjustment phase and focused on nurturing their daughter, hoping Chinedu would come around. A year passed and Amara became pregnant again. This time, Chinedu was more vocal about his desire for a son. "This time it must be a boy," he often said, his voice laced with expectation. Amara, burdened by his pressure, silently prayed for strength. When the time came, Amara gave birth to another girl, Nkemdilim. Chinedu's reaction was starkly different from before. He refused to hold the baby, muttering under his breath about her being another liability. He stormed out the house, leaving Amara in tears. Days turned into weeks and Chinedu grew colder. He began to criticize Amara, blaming her for their inability to have a son. "What kind of man am I without a son?" he spat one night during an argument. His disdain extended to his daughters, whom he saw as burdens. When Amara suggested sending Adaobi to school, Chinedu laughed bitterly. "What's the point? Girls belong in the kitchen, not the classroom." Amara's heart broke, but she was determined not to let his bitterness define their lives. Despite Chinedu's refusal, Amara secretly enrolled Adaobi in a nearby school. To pay for tuition, she began taking on menial jobs, washing clothes, selling roasted corn at dawn, and sewing late into the night. Her daughters, though young, understood their mother's sacrifices and promised to make her proud. The secrecy was exhausting. Amara would wake before dawn to prepare the girls, ensuring Chinedu wouldn't notice their absence. They hid their books in bushes and slipped out quietly. One afternoon, Chinedu caught them returning from school. His fury was volcanic. He beat Adobe and Nkemdilim mercilessly, calling them ungrateful and useless. Amara shielded them, enduring his blows and vowing silently to continue their education. That night, as she nursed her daughter's wounds, she whispered, "No matter what, you will rise above this." The tension in the household became unbearable. Chinedu's resentment poisoned the air, and Amara knew she had to protect her children at all costs. Amara lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling of their small room. The silence of the night was punctuated by Adaobi's soft sobs and Nkemdilim's heavy breathing, her small chest rising and falling with exhaustion. The bruises on their tiny bodies weighed heavily on Amara's heart. Chinedu's earlier outburst had been one of his worst yet, and Amara knew it wouldn't be the last. His words still echoed in her mind. "What use are girls to me? You've brought nothing but shame to this house." Tears streamed down Amara's face as she turned to look at her daughters, their innocence marred by a father who refused to see their worth. She thought of the life she had dreamed of when she married Chinedu, the laughter, the unity, the love. But those dreams had turned into a nightmare. Yet amidst her despair, a fire ignited within her. She made a vow that night. She would do whatever it took to protect her daughters and ensure they had a chance at a better life. The next morning, while Chinedu left for his carpentry shop, Amara took the girls aside. "No matter what happens, you must never let anyone make you feel less than you are," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You are worth more than gold, and one day the world will see it." From that day on, Amara doubled her efforts. She picked up more menial jobs, working long hours under the scorching sun and returning home late at night, often with blistered hands and aching muscles. She told her daughters to remain strong, promising them that their education would not be compromised. The girls began sneaking to school earlier, taking hidden paths and changing out of their uniforms before returning home. Chinedu's behavior grew worse. He often came home drunk, his bitterness spilling out in hateful words and violent outbursts. Amara shielded her daughters as best she could, enduring his wrath in silence. The community whispered about his cruelty, but no one dared confront him. Tradition dictated that a man's home was his kingdom, and no one had the right to interfere. One fateful evening, Chinedu dropped a bombshell that shattered what little peace Amara had managed to salvage. He returned home with a triumphant smirk, announcing that his mistress Kiyoma had given birth to a boy. "Finally, a real heir," he declared, his voice thick with pride. He packed his belongings that night, leaving Amara and the girls without a second glance. Amara's knees buckled as she watched him walk out the door. Her heart ached not for herself, but for her daughters, who had just lost their father to another family. Sayobi clung to her mother, sobbing uncontrollably, while Nkemdilim stared blankly at the floor, her young mind struggling to process the abandonment. But Amara refused to let despair consume her. As Chinedu walked away, she whispered under her breath, "You may have left us, but you will regret this day. My daughters will rise, and they will be everything you never believed they could be." With Chinedu gone, life became even harder. The little money he occasionally provided was no longer there. Amara worked herself to the bone, taking on every job she could find to keep her daughters fed and in school. Her resilience inspired Adobe and Kemdilim, who began excelling in their studies, driven by their mother's sacrifices. As the years passed, the girls grew into intelligent, determined young women. They supported each other through every challenge, drawing strength from their mother's unwavering love. Amara never let them forget the value of their worth, constantly reminding them of their potential to achieve greatness. Yet, beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, one that would test the limits of their strength and resilience. Amara's life had become a cycle of endless work and unwavering determination. Each day began before sunrise and ended long after the world had fallen asleep. Her daughters, now older, were her source of strength. Adobe, the eldest, had grown into a sharp and intelligent teenager. She often helped her mother sew and attended school with a determination that defied her circumstances. Nkemdilim, her younger sister, showed a flair for mathematics and dreamed of becoming an engineer. But the shadow of Chinedu loomed large over their lives. Despite his absence, his words and actions left scars that were difficult to heal. His departure to live with Kioma and the child he believed to be his son had emboldened him. He rarely visited, and when he did, it was to mock Amara and their daughters. "You're wasting time and money on these girls," he sneered during one such visit. "They will only end up as someone's wife, just like you." Amara clenched her fists, holding back tears as her daughters watched in silence. She refused to let his cruelty break her. "You may not see their worth," she replied quietly, "but one day the world will." Chinedu laughed, his voice filled with disdain. "Keep dreaming, Amara. While you're raising liabilities, I'm building a legacy." That evening, Amara sat her daughters down and spoke to them with a fierce intensity. "Your father's words mean nothing. You are my legacy, you are my pride, and I will not let anyone take that away from you." The girls hugged their mother tightly, their love for her deepening with each passing day. They knew the sacrifices she made, and they were determined to make her proud. But their journey was not without challenges. On more than one occasion, Chinedu caught wind of their continued education and tried to intervene. One fateful afternoon, he saw Adaobi and Kemdilim walking home from school. Furious, he dragged them home and confronted Amara. "You dare defy me," he roared, raising his hand to strike her. But this time Amara stood her ground. She shielded her daughters and met his gaze with unwavering defiance. "You may be their father, but you do not control their future. I will do whatever it takes to give them a chance at life." Chinedu stormed out, vowing to cut off all ties with them. But Amara was undeterred. She continued to work tirelessly, earning enough to ensure her daughter's education. Adobe began excelling in school, winning scholarships and accolades that caught the attention of the community. Nkemdilim followed suit, using her mathematical prowess to win competitions and earn recognition. As the years passed, Chinedu's life began to unravel. His relationship with Kioma grew strained, and the boy he thought was his son started to show differences that could no longer be ignored. Rumors began to circulate, and whispers of infidelity reached Chinedu's ears. One day, Chinedu confronted Chioma, demanding the truth. Her laughter was cold and cutting. "You think that boy is yours?" she sneered. "You were just a means to an end." The revelation shattered Chinedu. The boy he had poured his dreams into was not his own. Chioma, seeing no further use for him, left with the child, taking what little money he had left. Alone and penniless, Chinedu was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, Amara's daughters continued to rise. Adaobi became a renowned lawyer, fighting for women's rights and using her platform to inspire others. Nkemdilim, now an engineer, worked on projects that transformed communities. Their younger sister, Ifeoma, a talented artist, gained international acclaim for her work. Amara, though worn from years of struggle, glowed with pride. Her daughters had become everything she had hoped for and more. But as their success grew, so did Chinedu's desperation to reconnect with them. The town of Obinachi buzzed with whispers. Chinedu, once the proud carpenter with a booming business, now wandered the streets, a shadow of his former self. His clothes were tattered, his face lined with regret, and his pride shattered. News of Amara's daughter's success had reached him, each word a reminder of what he had lost. He sat under the same baobab tree where he first met Amara years ago, staring at the ground, consumed by his thoughts. His memories haunted him: Amara's resilience, Adaobi's bright eyes, Nkemdilim's laughter, and Ifeoma's curious questions. He had dismissed them, called them worthless, and now the daughters he had rejected were the pride of the community. Meanwhile, Amara and her daughters thrived. Adaobi's law firm in Iduka was the talk of the state, known for its fierce advocacy for marginalized women. Nkemdilim had built a company that employed hundreds, and Ifeoma's artwork was featured in galleries worldwide. Together, they bought their mother a beautiful home in Ikwoji, far from the memories of Chinedu's cruelty. They often gathered there, their bond stronger than ever. One evening, as the family sat on the veranda, sharing stories and laughter, a shadow fell over them. It was Chinedu. His once commanding presence had been replaced by a frail, broken man. Amara froze, her heart pounding. The girls exchanged glances, their faces hardening. "I've come to ask for forgiveness," Chinedu began, his voice trembling. "I was wrong. I was blind. I see now that you were my greatest blessings, and I threw it all away." Adaobi stood, her face stern. "Forgiveness? After all you did, after the years of pain you caused our mother and us? Do you think an apology erases the scars you left?" Nkemdilim added, her voice steady but cold. "You abandoned us, humiliated our mother, and called us liabilities. You only see our worth now that you have nothing." Chinedu fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I was a fool, blinded by my own ignorance. Please, give me a chance to make things right." Amara, silent until now, finally spoke. Her voice was calm but filled with an unshakable resolve. "Chinedu, I prayed for this day, not for your sake, but for mine. I prayed for the strength to face you without hatred in my heart. I forgive you, but forgiveness does not mean reconciliation." Her words struck like a hammer. Chinedu's shoulders sagged and he sobbed openly. "Please, let me see my grandchildren," he pleaded. Adobe shook her head. "You'll never meet them. We've built a life without you and we intend to keep it that way. Forgiveness is for us, not for you. It doesn't mean we forget." Chinedu left that day, his heart heavier than ever. He returned to Obinachi, where he lived in isolation, tormented by regret. He often wandered to the school he had once forbidden his daughters to attend, watching the children play and wondering what could have been. Years passed, and the Okonkwo sisters continued to flourish. Their mother, now older but still vibrant, often reflected on their journey. "You girls are my joy," she would say, her eyes shining with pride. "You've shown the world what true strength looks like." Adaobi used her wealth to establish scholarships for girls in Obinachi, ensuring no child faced the barriers she once did. Kem Dilim's company built schools and provided resources for underprivileged communities. Ifeoma's art celebrated the resilience of women, drawing inspiration from their mother's story. One day news came that Chinedu had passed away in his small, dilapidated home. The sisters received the message with little emotion. Amara, however, shed quiet tears. "He was a broken man," she said softly. "I hope he found peace in his final days." Though they did not attend his burial, the sisters honored their mother's wish to send financial support for the arrangements. "We are not like him," Adaobi said. "We will show kindness even if he did not." The story of Amara and her daughters became a legend in Obinachi, a testament to resilience, love, and the power of a mother's sacrifice. Their journey inspired countless women to rise above their circumstances and fight for their dreams. As Amara sat in her garden one evening surrounded by her daughters and grandchildren, she closed her eyes and smiled. She had lived a life of pain and triumph, and now she basked in the love of the family she had fought so hard to protect. Her daughters had become everything Chinedu had refused to see: strong, intelligent, and unstoppable. And as the sun set over the lush fields of Ikwoji, Amara knew she had fulfilled her vow. We've come to the end of this story. Please subscribe to my channel to support me. Thank you.